Hello, folks. Welcome to Campaigniacs, the final Campaigniacs edition during the actual Saskatchewan 2020 election campaign. I'm Murray Mandrick, political columnist for the Regina Leader Post. And joining me, as usual, Arthur White-Crummey, who is our legislative reporter and has been diligently and exhaustively following this campaign for way too long now. Joining us today, old buddy, our good friend of Arthur and I at the Saskatchewan Legislature, Adam Hunter, who covers politics for CBC TV and radio and everything. My pal on the Ledge Chat, one of the members of the panel for the debate. Hi, Adam. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Let's get right down to it because there's probably a lot of ground to cover. One last opportunity. Arthur, where were they making gains and grounds this week? What did you see as their strategy in terms of at least the two major campaigns? Where were they? What is it telling you about where this campaign is going into an election 5 days from now?
Well, first off, Murray, I have to tell you and all of our viewers that I have been in self-isolation since the weekend because of this unfortunate pandemic. But obviously I've been following.
I guess that explains it here.
Yes, exactly. I have not left my house in days, but I've been trying to follow matters from the comfort of my home. And it seems to me quite interesting how much time Scott Moe has been spending in Saskatoon. I'm not sure if anyone else has been noticing this, but he hasn't been back to Regina in well over a week. He's been spending a lot of time in Saskatoon and in Prince Albert. I'm not sure what we should read into that, but it does seem as though the Sask party is trying to increase the presence of the party leader in that domain, and perhaps.
Interesting. Let's quickly bring Adam into that because we were having a bit of a conversation about this before. What does that smell like to you, Adam? Like, is it because Regina is being a bit written off in terms of at least gains for the Sask party, or is it because Saskatoon seems that much more fertile to you?
If you look at the poll numbers, Regina is really tightening between the NDP and the Sask party. So you could read into that a little bit and say that maybe the Sask party doesn't think they're making gains in Regina. I think if you look at the seats that may be up for grabs, the Regina seats that are held by the NDP seem to be safe seats with Lakeview, Douglas Park, and Rosemont, Elphinstone Centre. Those are the last two are traditionally really NDP strongholds. When you look at Saskatoon, I think it's really interesting that Scott Moe has made two trips to Riversdale, specifically, and Mark Friesen's campaign. Yeah. And he ran against Danielle Chartier in the last election. It was very close. She won. And Murray, as you know, and Arthur, Riversdale, this is like NDP hallowed ground. You have Roy Romano, Lauren Calvert in this seat traditionally, and it's not being seen as one that's really going to be up for grabs. I think the NDP is probably fairly confident. We haven't seen a lot of Ryan Miley in Riversdale, but they're definitely aware that the Sask party, the Scott Moe campaign, has been spending a lot of time there. You mentioned PA as well. I think both parties would like to PA. Moose Jaw is another one that both party leaders have been to a couple times. Ryan Miley, we've seen the ads. He's a farm boy from near Moose Jaw, and his bus the other day that he took this SDC bus, which I'm sure we'll get into, had Moose Jaw on the front. I think they're really, they're trying to play up the Moose Jaw thing, and I think again both parties see those as battlegrounds, even though Moose Jaw. And one Moose Jaw seat and one PA seat have a little bit more of a gap as far as the NDP having to make up. But you can really tell a lot from where these leaders are going, where they've spent their time, and specifically Ryan Miley. I've spent a lot of time following the Miley campaign. I'm kind of locked into Regina here, and it wasn't on purpose. It's basically because he spent more time making announcements in Regina. We've only seen Scott Moe in Regina a couple of times, in almost as many times in Moose Jaw.
Well, let's talk about a few seats and jump in if you wish, Arthur, because I'm curious to get a few opinions other than my own. Walsh Acres, why has no one been there when you think that seat would be up for grabs in Regina, given all the turmoil with Sandra Morin's nomination? One seat that I'm kind of curious about, they did kick off the campaign, they being the Sask party, in Regina Pasqua, where Mohammed Fayez seems to be in trouble, but I haven't really seen them back. Today they're in Lakeview, where I don't think the Sask party has a chance. what's going on here strategically? I don't really fully appreciate what they're doing here. Or is it just simply a matter of you have to be someplace, and it's not maybe the best thing in the world to always be in the same ridings, because that makes it a little bit too obvious?
Yeah, I mean, I see it the same way that we just heard from Adam. There's a lot more seats that are potentially in play for the Sask party in Saskatoon. I mean, Riversdale was, I think, the third closest riding in 2016, as strange as that is. Whereas I don't really see any feasible pickups for the Sask party in Regina. Whereas there's at least 4 or 5 that are feasible pickups for the NDP. Walsh Acres is an interesting case. Perhaps we haven't seen Scott Moe there because they feel sufficiently confident in the vote split on the left between Kelly Hardy and Sandra Morin that it's pretty much a lock for the Sask party. Both candidates on the left will dispute that, but from the beginning, it seems like Derek Myers has seemed pretty confident with his door knocking lead and with what the Morin Hardy split is going to do for that particular constituency.
Well, Adam, I'm going to bring you in here because, folks, this is the ultimate nod. We are talking about the ultimate guy north of Dewdney. Everything that you want to know north of Dewdney, ask Adam. But your folks, I think, are in the Walsh Acres riding, aren't they? And that's, I can't remember if you grew up there or not, but is that the case where you're familiar with all the candidates there? Could it be a situation where the Sask party is fully confident in taking that seat that it's just not worth the time and trouble? Or
this is kind of flipped where Sandra Morin had a real advantage because she was nominated early. And of course, we remember that, Warren Stanley resigned his seat to run in the federal election, and that seat's been open since last September. So Sandra Morin had a big head start with name recognition, door knocking, let's say, getting a team together. Her team has now joined her on the independent side. And we know that there's been a bit of turmoil and back and forth there with the NDP being I'm proud of OD, as you mentioned, Marie, and from that area. I'm really struck by, seeing a lot of Sandra Morin signs, but a lot of Kelly Hardy signs too. And she came in very, very late in the game, much later than Sandra Morin, even with the stories coming out. And Derek Myers, who, as you mentioned, has had an advantage of being the only candidate there for quite a while, with any certainty. So I think that the Sask party thinks that's a pickup, whereas maybe 2 months ago, the NDP would be counting on that as a win. So that one's one that I think may be a missed opportunity for the NDP looking back. We don't know the details on what happened with Sandra Morin and the party behind the scenes. But that could be one, on election night where we're going, okay, this is one they could have picked up, which is traditionally has been an NDP seat, with the exception of Warren Stanley winning a couple of elections ago. And I think, as you guys mentioned, the Regina ones I think that are really, really in play are Coronation Park, which is Mark Doherty's seat. He's the speaker for the Sask party. That's traditionally been very, very close, even with Mark Doherty winning very narrowly in the last 2 elections. And Regina Pasqua, as you mentioned. That one I'm really curious about because, Marie, you know that area really well. Yeah. And I think the really interesting thing there is Harbor Landing. And this is a brand new neighborhood that wasn't really in play, I think, 4 years ago, and to the extent that it is now. We have a packed school there. They've announced another school coming up there. It's a real mix of, very nice big houses mixed in with some apartments and condos. New Canadians, small, young families. So I think how those people decide to vote and where they go is really anyone's guess. And I think the parties are both signaling that. I know Arthur knows this as something that's up for grabs. In Saskatoon, I think there's more certainty with some of the Saskatchewan party seats because we have a lot of cabinet ministers running for re-election there, and they won by very large margins. But I think there's really a handful of seats in Saskatoon that are for grabs, and the one we haven't touched on yet is Meewasin.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. Are we going to see Moe in Ryan Miley's home turf in the last few days of the campaign, just out of spite, if nothing else?
I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm actually surprised that we haven't seen more Ryan Miley in Meewasin. There was some criticism 4 years ago of Cam Brote not spending enough time in Westview, that he was doing too much time campaigning. Maybe that's a signal that the NDP thinks that it's safe and they're okay, but this isn't a seat that the NDP it's for sure NDP. It's been split between the Liberals and the NDP and the Sask party in the past 3 ways. And of course, we know that this last two elections, Dwayne Lingenfelter lost to a rookie in 2011, and Cam Broten lost to a rookie in 2017. Both were upsets, or 2016, sorry, both were upsets. And Ryan Miley's up against that same history against Rylan Hunter, who is, I'm told, door knocking. He's a U of S Huskies alumni. He's well known in the community, and he actually knocked off Chris Carrette in the nomination, which was a surprise as well. So shouldn't be taken for granted there. And I think the last couple of days will tell us a lot about where the real horse races are, where these leaders decide to go.
And I think they lucked into a real thing as the Sask Party when they lost Daryl Cooper, their Eastview candidate, and Garrett moved into that riding because she is, by all measure, a strong candidate that could be successful there. And I'm kind of wondering if that even kind of helps the Sask Party in Eastview a bit. Is there any place, do you think, the NDP can actually make gains that might surprise us a little, either in some of the rural seats where they absolutely have to break through if they ever want to be taken seriously as a government option? It's this election or bust in terms of, for the NDP, in terms of making it through in rural Saskatchewan, because we saw what happened last time when they couldn't sort of establish a stronger vote.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's feasible for the NDP to actually win seats outside of the four biggest cities. That being said, I think that they need to show signs of progress in some of the rural ridings that they've been targeting. The NDP has been really clear with us about where they're investing their resources. So I think that we're going to be watching really closely whether they're able to make gains and close the gap to some extent in seats like Last Mountain Touchwood, Indian Head Milestone, Batoche, Sask Rivers, Battlefords. Those are really, I think, going to be the gauge. These are ridings that the Sask Party won by approximately 2,500 to 2,700 votes 4 years ago. If the NDP can close that and get up to 30% support in some of those ridings, I think it'll be a meaningful sign that they've created a beachhead where they can maybe make progress in rural Saskatchewan in the coming elections. Because as we talked about early on in this campaign, Murray, like it's just so tough to win some of those suburban Saskatoon seats. They're
like rural seats. They really are.
Yeah, essentially that you need to have some options, right? I mean, and if the NDP is continuously locked out of, rural Saskatchewan, I just don't see how they're ever going to form government.
Adam, do you see a place where, based on the advanced polls or anything else that we're seeing right now in this election, where people are going to stay home because of COVID, because they see large Sask Party leads, where that actually might make a bit of a difference, where things where votes might be taken for granted and change things directly? We've talked very little about how this election is being affected by what's going on around us with COVID-19, but sure in hell is. We know this. Well, as Arthur said, he's home self-isolating. The campaigns are way different than they used to be. We aren't going to see big rallies on election night because we can't. Is there any place that you see where that might translate actually in terms of seat difference come Monday night?
I don't know about seat difference. I think voter apathy, when like Arthur mentioned, some of these places where there's just a huge Sask Party lead, and even, for the same token, places where there's an NDP lead, people may go, okay, well, this is a safe NDP seat and I'm not going to go vote. We may see voter turnout go down. To Arthur's earlier point about the beachheads, I think the NDP needs to show percentage gains in vote count. They may not. That's a good point. They may only gain a few seats, but if they can up that vote percentage, get the Sask Party well under 60-55%, then start closing that gap, I think their supporters may see that as a bit of a victory. I was at a polling station yesterday. I can tell you that everyone was wearing a mask. It was actually very quick. I saw, a lot of seniors, which we do expect on advanced polling days. I don't know how the parties are attacking getting people out to the polls, because, in the past, people would be driving, some to the polls. Maybe that's something that people are comfortable with. I don't know. And I think the one thing we really missed in this campaign, I know it's kind of been too bad from a reporting perspective is, Arthur and I go to these announcements and there's the same 4 or 5 staffers, maybe some people that are supporting, either party, and you see the handful of journalists, and it's the same dozen people every time. We're not getting these big rallies where we can talk to supporters, where we can get a sense of how things are going, what issues people are really drawn to. And I think the one thing that I would say this campaign is really missing other than that is when you talk to people about the election, no one says, okay, this is the reason I'm voting, or this is the real thing that made a splash to me, or that made an impression on me. Even in the debate afterwards, you weren't hearing people going, online or otherwise, hey, I really like that thing they announced. That is new, and that's something that's good. Because people tend to vote, I think, on one issue or maybe the candidate they really like, and not a lot of door knocking or FaceTime with their candidates. I think we're really missing that big splash from either party. We saw the STC bus, as I mentioned, rolled out this week as a bit of a prop. But other than that, there really hasn't been that moment during the campaign. Earlier on, we had Scott Moe coming out and disclosing his driving history, which was a new revelation. But I don't think we're going to go back to this campaign and go, hey, there was that one really memorable moment or one really memorable promise that either party came out with. This is something that's been, I think, very predictable. And I think all three of us, going into this, something we probably expect.
That's interesting on a couple levels, because there is a lot of anger in this campaign. You just have to tune into your Twitter account or tune into any Facebook account, and there's keyboard warriors out all over the place hammering away, particularly at the Sask party from what I've seen. But yet it doesn't really seem to be translating into anything viable for vote changes. Or is there a sense that anyone can harness these sentiments, Arthur, to the point of actually producing something that's going to make a difference? Or is it people just basically spouting off, and that's about where it's going to remain in terms of the outcome of this election campaign?
Well, I've always been pretty skeptical about how much what people say on Twitter matters for the real world of politics. But that being said, the parties seem to be taking it seriously, particularly on Facebook, where they've been spending thousands of dollars. What I've really enjoyed is having the ability to go and look at party spending, which Facebook is thankfully transparently making available for us. And the NDP got off to an early lead in the campaign. That being said, I want to go back to what Adam said about the campaign events and how different they've been, and how they've just basically been the same staffers over and over again. And it makes me wonder how much this strategy of reading the tea leaves from riding visits even matters. Because if a party leader goes to a riding and they're just talking to the media with a few of their staffers, does it really matter that Scott Moe is going to Saskatoon Riversdale? Does it really matter that Ryan Miley is going to Regina Coronation Park? It's really just for the media market. I mean, they're really just talking to us. And so long as they're in one of the two big cities, they're going to get that exposure. So I'm just not sure how much the leaders tour even matters in this day and age, when people are locked up in their homes and you can't really even come to supercharge the volunteers.
Particularly go ahead.
Yeah, I think a great example of that is Battlefords. I keep wondering why Scott Moe keeps going back to the Battlefords. That's not one that everyone thinks is really in play. I know Arthur mentioned it as where the NDP thinks they can get more votes. They have a new candidate there. That could be part of the reason. But also to the media market thing, that's close to Saskatoon, where you can get to Saskatoon from there. The Saskatoon media will go out and cover that event, and that's really what they want. Same with the Moose Jaw is a similar one, right? Moose Jaw we do see as more of a battleground, but Regina media will go there. You'll get your pool camera, which we've been doing. I mean, the viewers may not know that, but the broadcast media has been going together every day and making up a schedule. So, between CTV Global and CBC, there's always a camera. So we don't have 3 cameras at every event. So we limit the numbers there, and then they send that footage out. So as long as they know they can get a pool camera to an event and they know it's within driving distance, I think that's something that's been in play. But, Scott Moe did a lot of his pre-election tour before the election, where he was hitting all these little communities and doing FaceTime with different candidates and MLAs. And Ryan Miley did the same, mostly in Regina and Saskatoon, but he was around a little bit. I think that's part of the reason why we're not seeing them spread out. Also the pandemic, but Arthur made a great point there about about the media. They're trying to get in front of as many faces as possible. And back to the Facebook thing, you don't need the media there necessarily because you're putting all these announcements, photo ops and things on Facebook all the time. You're getting your message out, you're doing your memes. So I think that's another advantage and something that we've seen grow over the last 4 years, where the parties are spending a lot of their time and money and resources on getting that Facebook message out, making sure that all these events are taken live and people can watch them at home and comment in real time. So I think we sometimes get in our echo chamber of what we're seeing on Twitter or Facebook, but I don't think that really translates to average voter. They're not paying that close of attention to it. The people that are paying close of attention to it, maybe the partisans who already have made their mind up and they're not on the fence either way. They're just trying to drive the conversation.
That takes us to where campaigns are somewhat changing compared to where they used to be, and that leads into your next segment on the youth vote, Arthur. What do you expect to see in terms of the youth vote? And from the piece that's coming up, can you explain it and tell us what surprised you about what you found out?
Yeah, so I spoke to two students who were both on the youth debate from Monday evening. They're poli-sci students, so we might be talking to them in the future to get our expert voices in the future generations. Bronwyn, Heerspink, and also, sorry, I have a stutter, as you know, and Alanna DeCorby, who are 19 and 21. So this will be their first election. And I got a sense of how young people are grappling with the decisions of who to vote for the first time in this unique election. Really, I got the sense that a lot of them are nervous about the economy, and that certainly plays into the Sask party message. But they're also really prioritizing what they frame as human rights issues, and something that really stuck with them that I didn't necessarily expect was the camp that we had here in Regina that was calling for change in suicide, and Ryan Miley's attacks about why Scott Moe didn't visit that camp really resonated with a lot of the young voters that I spoke to. That was something that they found to be inexcusable. They are totally disgusted with the high rates of suicide in the north, and are really accepting the NDP message that the Sask party plan isn't good enough and viewing it as inaction. I don't know whether the youth debate that I attended was a partial picture of the way that young people are feeling. Clearly, it's a certain kind of engaged young voter that ends up going on to that kind of virtual debate. That being said, that really did turn out to be a top issue for a lot of the young voters that I spoke to.
I'll leave the last word with you, Adam, and you can start out by saying Mandrick talking about the youth vote is like...
I mean, ask your kids. I think they may have a perspective on that. I think that's really interesting from Arthur. That's a perspective we haven't heard from. I think there are voices that we haven't heard from in this campaign because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's maybe a bit trickier. Maybe we need to try a bit harder to find these different voices. But I think seniors is one where this is a big voting bloc. They're very affected by the pandemic right now.
Damn straight we are.
Yes, I didn't want to say anything, but I'm glad you mentioned that. And I think that's one area where you have people on the higher end of the voting age and the lower end of the voting age. We kind of tend to forget them, and they do go out and vote. And I think if we do see a big youth vote, I'll be intrigued to see where that goes and how that breakdown is. And I'm interested to hear from Arthur's guests. And I think I just want to give one plug. Watch CBC on election night. You'll see my big head for quite a few hours, and you might see another handsome guy in my picture. Sorry, Arthur. This guy down here.
The old
First was
guy.
a pipe. Yeah, that's right, Marie.
That's right.
But thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much, guys. This is weird because it's actually surprisingly like every conversation we have every day. So I thank you both for joining us, and people, get out and vote. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Arthur. Have a good election and have a good election night.
Thank you.
Cheers. Hi again to all, and welcome back to our Campaigniacs podcast. I'm here again for our last episode where we're talking about youth issues, and I'm here with two aspiring, two two aspiring political scientists from the U of R, Bronwyn Heerspink and Alanna DeCorby, who are both in UR Polis, which is the student association for all political science students at the U of R, from what I understand. So we'll probably be hearing a lot about from them in our interviews in the next 10 to 20 years down the road. I'm sure I'll be interviewing you guys long into the future. So, but here today, we're here to talk about the 2020 election campaign, where, as I understand it, both of you are going to be voting for the first time in a provincial vote. So that's interesting. And I definitely want to get a sense from both of you about what's going to be driving your decisions. But first of all, I'll just start with some introductions. So starting with Bronwyn, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, what drew you to politics, and just what you're interested in this campaign is.
Yeah, so I'm currently in my second year of my honors political science degree. I sort of like to call back to the event that drove me into politics was when I was in grade 4, the 2011 federal election. I just sort of like was hooked, and I've never stopped ever since. But yeah, so this is the first time I'm going to be voting in this upcoming provincial election. I did get to vote in the last federal election as well. And I'm the events coordinator for UR Polis, as well as this election season. I am an events elections fellow with Future Majority.
Perfect. And now we'll jump over to Alanna. Tell me a bit about yourself as well.
Hello, all. My name is Elena DeCorby. I am actually a student in philosophy, politics, and economics. It's a PPE degree at the University of Regina. It's quite unique. I believe it's the only one in Saskatchewan offered. I don't believe it's offered by the University of Saskatchewan, but I might be wrong. I don't have quite the same story as Bronwyn. I was first interested in both philosophy and economics. I always was kind of interested in politics. I thought it was interesting, and it was always kind of elusive to me as a kid and as a teenager, but I always thought it was pretty interesting. So I started my degree in philosophy. I took some econ classes. I liked it, and then I found this degree, and it really hooked me in, and I have been pretty dedicated ever since. I like to debate, and I like to learn different opinions and views, and so it fits really well for politics. It is also my first time voting in provincial election, and I as well had the opportunity to vote in the federal election last year.
Okay. Well, both of you are likely more tuned in than a lot of young people into this campaign, just kind of given your background and given your interest. But I wanted to ask you just what you're picking up in your social circles, in virtual campus life, as I understand it all is now, about how interested young people are in this campaign and how much they care. Are we seeing any more mobilization, any more buzz than we usually see? I'll start with Alanna.
I think I have kind of an interesting perspective just because I am outside of the city. So I haven't been able to see a lot of the youth within the city where I usually am at the university. I guess Bronwyn hasn't either, just not being on campus and all. But from what I can tell, it's definitely there. I should say it goes both ways. There's a little bit more mobilization because of the pandemic we're going through. I think that young people, and myself included, are really worried about the economy that they'll be entering into when they graduate. And I have a few colleagues that are just graduated, so newly graduates, that are very concerned with what the Saskatchewan economy is going to look like moving forward. So I definitely think on that end there is some more mobilization, and some more interest. But on the other hand, I think that a lot of students, especially maybe rural, are having a little bit more trouble getting excited, getting involved. They're not really seeing the posters, the events that they can attend. Thankfully, we had events like the debate last night that some students were able to get involved. But I have seen or heard that people aren't quite aware as they were for the federal election. That could just be a sense that I'm getting, but that is definitely something that I think is a recurring theme so far.
Now, turning over to Bronwyn, I mean, the the stats on this are not great. We don't know exactly what the turnout is in terms of provincial campaigns, but for the last federal election, barely half of people 19 to 24 voted. I'm wondering if you're expecting that to change and why you think that is.
Well, I think we're seeing an uptick in terms of the trends on youth voting. Especially within the 2015 and the 2019 election, we have seen some steady gains. So I'm hoping that that upward mobility will continue. There's a really interesting report done by the Samara Center for Democracy that outlines sort of how young people are getting involved in politics. And it shows that young people are becoming even more politically active than some of their older counterparts, but not necessarily in the voting capacity one would think one would normally associate with political activity. Young people are more likely to get involved in a political campaign. Young people are more likely to talk with their friends about political issues, sign petitions, get involved with social activism. So I think we're just needing to see, and I think that's what Future Majority is trying to do as well, try to translate that youth excitement for social change and for political change and actually bring that to the ballot box. So I'm hopeful for the future. I think especially within Regina, over the summer, we saw a lot of mobilization among young people on specific social issues, looking at the Black Lives Matter protest that was the rally that was held at the Legislative Building, the protests surrounding Tristan Jurachet. We're seeing a lot of people getting excited and interested about those political issues. And like Alanna noted, people worried about their economic futures. So we're just hoping to see that translate into attendance at the ballot box.
And as you said, that's part of what you were trying to do through, we'll be broadcasting this Wednesday, so I should say Monday's debate in the evening, where we had the NDP leader and the environment minister debating on youth-focused issues. It was quite broad. It covered a lot of territory. Bronwyn, because a group that you volunteer for was involved in putting that together, why don't you give me a sense of what you were trying to achieve and whether you thought that the two candidates came with the goods for young people?
Yeah, so I think our sort of main goal and our main goal throughout this campaign is just to have politicians address the concerns that are unique to young people across this province, and also to sort of break the stigma that young people are politically apathetic. I think as soon as parties understand that young people are voting base that they can rely on and a voting base that they need to listen to, we're going to progress a lot as a province. Again, it's our future at stake here. So I think not only our generation, but the province as a whole benefits from leaders sort of actually like getting into what young people care about, listening to what we have to say, and presenting some policy to address that. But I definitely do think that considering, first of all, the amount of media attention that the youth leaders debate got, that we're seeing that sort of, seeing that goal sort of come to fruition, as well as, I don't know if you were able to, or any of your listeners were able to watch the actual debate itself, but we were able to get into some good conversations about the issues that matter to young people. I know I left that debate with a sense of sort of satisfaction that the two parties are listening to what young people across the province have to say. So overall, I would say I'm pretty satisfied that, and there is a long way to go, of course, but I think I'm satisfied that this was a good sort of first couple steps towards getting young people's issues and young people's concerns sort of into the political mainstream.
Absolutely. To move over to Alanna, you were a spectator or a participant in that debate. I saw you there. I was watching it too. I saw your name come out, which is how I tracked you down. So as you were watching that as a spectator, did you feel that your concerns were being heard? Did you feel like the way that the two candidates were engaging with, young people was resonating with you?
I would definitely say, yes. Yeah. I thought that it was such a fantastic event. I know from the UR Paulus side, for both me and Bronwyn, we know that we have it is a struggle sometimes to get just students, youth, any of those groups involved and really, I guess, fighting and fighting to have their voice heard. And so it was a fantastic event. It was so amazing to see so many people on that call, and just all the different people who were able to ask questions, who were able to just listen and hear what our politicians had to say. As what you said about if I was satisfied with what they had to say, I think that's much more of a personal political opinion. I had said this earlier today, but I was a bit disappointed that Mr. Moe, of his absence. I think that it really would have benefited the Saskatchewan Party, and it was a huge opportunity for Mr. Moe to hear the specific issues and questions of the largest voting bloc in this election. If we show up, hopefully we will. That is a side note, but I do really think that it was a missed opportunity for the Saskatchewan Party and Mr. Moe in particular. But all in all, I definitely think that both sides had a great debate. They both put forward so many policies that they have plans for or have already implemented as for the Saskatchewan Party side, and I'm excited to see on the 26th what happens.
Okay, so to zoom out and look at the campaign as a whole for a second, it seems like it's been largely about affordability, the economy, investments, and threats about cuts. I was wondering whether the two of you personally feel like these are issues that speak to young people, or whether your concerns are being left off the table. Maybe we'll start with Bronwyn. And I'll ask you to put your personal hat on, because I know that you're also speaking sometimes on behalf of Future Majority.
Okay. So from this point onwards, until I change my put my different hat back on, I'm going to be speaking as Bronwyn the individual, not Bronwyn as a Future Majority volunteer. But I think the concerns of young people have somewhat been addressed. I wish that we see a little bit more. I wish that we could see a little bit more so of a focus on tuition and investments being made in education. And this got brought up last night at the debate. The Sask Advantage Scholarship, that's something that I am really interested in sort of seeing being addressed, because my first year of university, it was cut from being a universal scholarship to being needs-based. So now the fact that the Sask Party is saying that there's an increase to the Sask Advantage Scholarship. I would like to personally see the stats on, okay, well, now how many people received the scholarship last year when it became that needs-based scholarship? How many people were receiving it prior to? I know something we talked about a lot in my classes this previous year prior to the pandemic was the Sask 2030 growth goals. I wish that the leaders, especially the leaders of the Saskatchewan Party, discussed a little bit more where university students within Saskatchewan fit within that plan. We saw a lot of discussion last night about jobs for Saskatchewan workers. I think as a university student, I'd love to hear where students who are educated fit into that plan, and whether we're wanting to build more human capital within the province and where that fits within Saskatchewan's future goals. But yeah, I think those are two things that I'd sort of like to see a little bit more emphasis on. But I think overall, the concerns of young people are the concerns of all people within this province. And I think a lot of the concerns that young people have overlap with those of other people in other age brackets within Saskatchewan. So yeah, I would say overall we're doing well, but we're not perfect.
And now for Alanna, do you see yourself recognized or represented in the party platforms or what they've been talking about on the campaign trail? Do you feel like they're speaking to you as a first-time voter?
For sure, yeah. So I definitely agree with Bronwyn. I just want to digress for a moment. I do agree with Bronwyn 100% about the tuition, the Sask Advantage Scholarship, about it is really all, politics is all about framing your platform. And I feel that the Saskatchewan Party in particular is framing this platform as increasing the Saskatchewan Advantage Scholarship, for $250 on top of the $500 to a total of $750. It paints maybe a misleading picture for some reading that, because they don't know just maybe they're not a post-secondary student, that kind of thing, that it is needs-based. So to them, it looks like that the Saskatchewan Party is investing in post-secondary students and that kind of thing. But if there is that little, I'm not quite sure the word, but that hiccup, there is that extra, the but, I guess I should say. But anyway, back to your question. I do feel like I am being represented in some ways. As I mentioned before, the economy is right now, just because of the pandemic, it is the sole concern. It is the most pressing concern for Saskatchewan right now. But at the same time, I think that this election in particular has really veered away from the social issues. As we saw last night at the debate, or sorry, I should say Monday night at the debate, lots of the social issues were brought up, and some of them didn't have answers to those questions. Of course, I am referencing Minister Duncan, but also Dr. Miley didn't have very specific answers as well. I understand that it is a part of the debate, and given the time, the pressures, all of that kind of stuff, it is sometimes tough to have very specific answers. But I think sometimes right now, those social issues are getting overlooked, which include Indigenous issues, the topic of Tristan DeRocher coming to the Saskatchewan Legislative Building, and also LGBTQ plus issues in Saskatchewan. I think they're getting a little bit overlooked in this election, and I think that a lot of young people really care about those issues.
Yeah, so long as we're on the topic of things that are getting overlooked, I suppose that I'm surprised by how, to what extent climate change has not become a major issue in this debate, despite the fact that it's a frequent attack line from the Sask Party. We certainly see it in the advertisements, but I'm not hearing it in party announcements, and I'm not necessarily hearing the NDP talk very much about it, aside from Renew Saskatchewan, which is certainly part of their plan. I was wondering, do either of you feel like that issue is being treated with the gravity it deserves? Certainly, we've seen mass mobilization on this issue, particularly when it comes to young people. Do you feel like it's being taken seriously enough? We'll start with Bronwyn.
Well, I think, like Alanna said, right now, I think the economy is sort of number one in everybody's minds. So it is difficult to sort of have a multifaceted campaign and say we're thinking of all of these policies right now when people are saying, look, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to afford to stay in my house. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to have a job in 2 years when I graduate. So it's hard to sort of find a way to fit all of these issues into a platform and present it cogently to voters. But yeah, I definitely think that climate change should be sort of in the forefront of campaigns. I think we even saw it last night, or I guess Monday night in the debate, when they discussed green jobs for young people, sort of understanding that climate policy and addressing climate change fits into sort of every aspect of policy and every aspect of looking at where we're at going forwards as a province. So I think if parties are wanting to sort of find a way to fit environmental policy a little bit stronger within their platform, understanding of ways to sort of mesh it in with issues that are omnipresent in people's minds. I know personally, I find nuclear development super interesting. So hearing the party leaders discuss that was, especially within the context of how we're going to have jobs for our generation going forward, I thought that was very interesting in it. I'm hoping that that discussion last night made a lot of young voters think, oh yeah, like there are a bunch of alternatives that I'm not really thinking about. And maybe that got them a little bit more interested in economic policy or environmental policy.
So it sounds like both of you are pretty engaged. I take it that you're both planning to vote in the coming election?
Definitely.
Of course.
Okay. I won't delve into the personal details about for whom, but I'll ask you both if you want to convey a message to other young people that are maybe less apprised of what's been going on in this campaign and still hesitating about whether or not they're going to cast their ballots. Starting with Elena.
If I were to say one thing, I would just say that there's a lot of change that needs to happen in Saskatchewan from a youth point of view. I don't think it's acceptable that we have the lowest minimum wage. I don't think it's acceptable we have the highest tuition of Western universities. What else? Just different things. 60% of children living on reserve live in poverty. I don't think that's acceptable. There's a list of things that I think are inadequate with the way our government's running now. And so I think we need change, whether that is in the Sask party, if they can show some different policies, some different institutions, if they can institute change, or if that is a switch to the NDP, I'm not sure. I don't have the answers. I won't claim to be an expert, but I definitely think that coming from a youth perspective, we do need change in the province, and I'm excited to hopefully see that come.
Okay. And now for Bronwyn, what do you want to convey to your peers?
Yeah, what I would mainly convey, and as a future majority volunteer, I've been calling a lot of students across the province and having conversations with them about their concerns about their life post-COVID. Young people are worried right now. Young people are stressed. They're finding it difficult to manage fears about the economy and fears about their future with the inability to find a job and the inability to go to school in a normal way. So what I would say is if you're feeling stressed right now, this is the opportunity to change things. This is the opportunity for you to make an impact. We've seen a lot of social and political activism from young people across the province and across Canada recently. It's time to channel that energy into going to the polls and making a vote, making a decision for what you want your future to be. It is in your hands, and we do have the ability to influence policy if we let politicians know that we are a reliable voting base. I think if I could give a quick message to any members of the government who are listening, I think this is the time for you to invest in young people, invest in making young people politically literate, expanding things like the Minister's Education Council, getting young people involved and making young people active players within democracy and within their government. I think that is a great step to take if we're wanting to see young people and young people's concerns addressed within the Saskatchewan government effectively.
I think that's a good high point to end on. So I just want to note for our audio listeners who can't see us right now that Bronwyn has a backdrop featuring the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Bill of Rights, which might be one of the most topical and maybe predictable backdrops given who she is.
I've also got these two books that are they've got like maps from old election results too. So I'm very on theme today. I've got
you might win the award for
student room.
Might win the award for nerdiest library, but I can definitely sympathize with that. Great. Well, thanks to both of you so much, and thanks to all of our viewers and all of our listeners for sticking with us through this incredible journey of Campaigniacs. And I guess we'll see you on the other side when we know what's happened with our beloved Legislative Assembly. So thanks to both of you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Bye-bye.